When we go to Central America, we find a place called Palenque, right next to the Guatemalan border. Here we find a pyramid. It is called the Pyramid of the Inscriptions. Only recently did they discover that this pyramid was also a tomb, as well as a temple. As we go down the passageway, we find that there was a casket at the base, and there was a carving on the lid of the casket showing an individual that is sitting actually on a stylized jaguar. Some say this is an astronaut taking off to outer space in a UFO. Could this be so? It is interesting that we find similar carvings all over this world of ours, with a tree in the form of a cross called the Immortality Tree. There is a good book called Gods and Devils from Outer Space by a man named Eric Norman. It is on the center left. And in this book, he tells the story of a police officer named Herbert Schirmer, who on December 3rd, 1967, was traveling along a lonely road in Ashland, Nebraska. It was early in the morning, still dark, and as Herbert Schirmer traveled along, it seemed like the animals were fidgeting in the farmyards, and it seemed strange as he traveled along, the feeling that he had. And then he noticed something strange off in the distance as he traveled, a blinking light. And he followed that light up on a hill. And when he came within a short distance of that blinking light, he saw that it was a UFO. The lights of his car went out. He was frightened. And then he saw some beings come out of that UFO, according to his story. And he made a startling remark about these creatures that came out of the UFO. He wrote it, and it was published in the book. On the left side of the chest is an emblem, he said, a winged serpent. Now, why would Herbert Schirmer say that they had an emblem of a winged serpent when there's no such thing as a snake with wings? He was either lying or he saw an emblem of a winged serpent. Now, there's an interesting legend that we find throughout this world that revolves around a winged serpent that I believe gives an answer behind the mystery of the UFO movement. Let us go back to Central America. Here we find a legend of a great white god that is called a winged serpent god. He was given many names. He was called Quetzalcoatl, Kukulkan, Sume, Kukamech, Amaru, and according to the legends, he came from outer space many years ago, set up the kingdoms of Central America, gave them a code of laws, and left and promised to return as the great white god on a sacred year. And so the people in that part of the world are looking for the return of the great white god. When Hernando Cortez came to Central America in 1519, the natives of Montezuma thought that he was the returning great white god, the winged serpent god in a reincarnated state. But they soon discovered he was not the great white god. Now, at a place called Chichen Itza, in the upper right-hand corner of the Yucatan that you will see on a map, you will find there a temple. And on this temple we find what is called the Chacmul, a reclining figure, and on either side of the Chacmul are two snakes with wings. They called them winged, feathered, or plumed serpents. Now, the Chacmul was like the Pharaoh of Egypt. He was worshipped as God on earth. So here we find winged serpents on either side of the life-giver in Central America, just as we found in Egypt on the either side of King Tut's golden throne. We also find snakes with wings as banisters and throughout the art of Central America. This is the place in Chichen Itza where we find a number of snakes with wings. This is a ball court at Chichen Itza. These ball courts are found throughout Mexico. And in these ball courts, they had carvings. The carving of a winged serpent that went the full length of the two walls of these ball courts. They had ball games there, and a little rubber ball about 9 inches in diameter, hoops that went up to as far as 18 feet, and the first side that got the ball through the hoop, the other side lost the game. Now, according to some, there were human sacrifices during these games that were made to the winged serpent god. We not only find winged serpents in the art of Central America, but dragons. But there's no such thing as a dragon, and there is no such thing as a winged serpent. And yet we found dragons and winged serpents in the art of Egypt as well. When we go to the Orient, we find dragons everywhere. And it was worshipped in the religion of the Oriental. But there's no such thing as a dragon. Now this is in Bangkok, in Thailand. This is a beautiful palace there in that city. And we find strange creatures in that palace. They are supposed to protect against the evil angels that destroy. Many mystic symbols can be seen in the art of this palace. Across the street from this palace is a temple where they train Buddhist priests. And as one goes into this temple, you will find Buddha, who is the life giver of the Orient, with two winged serpents on either side of him. The heads are at the base, the tails come together at the top, and the wings are in the form of a crescent moon. Two winged serpents on either side of the god of the Orient. Let us go to Scandinavia, the land of the midnight sun, where there are beautiful fjords. The Vikings lived from about 700 to 900 AD, some say up to 1100 AD. They were devil worshippers. Today we find their descendants fishing in the fjords. Now about 1100 AD, the Vikings claimed to accept Christianity. So they made dragon churches. They call them stav churches over there. And they have dragons with shingles that are in the shape of the scales of a dragon. Now, if you look at this dragon church in Oslo in Norway, you will find carvings of winged serpents. They are highly stylized, and at times you can almost make out a snake with wings with all the stylized art. In Oslo, they have what they call the Osberg ship. This ship was made in the form of a serpent. You will find that the bow of the ship is the head of a serpent, the stern of the ship is the tail of a serpent, the body of the ship represents the body of a serpent, the shields were overlapped like the scales of a serpent, and in the ancient cultures, wings were associated with sails. The Osberg ship was actually in the form of a winged serpent. And winged serpents can be found in the teachings of the Vikings. Now, when the Viking went to war, they used a dragon ship. And the people said, "Deliver us from the Vikings," because that dragon represented a destroyer. Dragons and winged serpents, even in Scandinavia. The American Indian had winged serpents as well in their religion.